When President Joe Biden took office, many Americans hoped for a return to stability and progress. However, as the years unfolded, a series of economic, social, and political challenges unraveled that narrative, leaving a presidency defined more by its shortcomings than its achievements. Was Biden's tenure a true failure? Let's explore why many critics believe so. Economic struggles and national debt surge. One of the most glaring issues during President Joe Biden's tenure was the dramatic increase in the U.S. national debt. When Biden took office, the total gross debt was $27.75 trillion. By mid-2024, this figure had ballooned to $34.73 trillion, marking an increase of $6.97 trillion. This surge translated to an additional $20,925 per person and $53,061 per household in debt. The rapid rise in debt meant the U.S. was accruing approximately $220 billion in new debt each month, burdening taxpayers and raising concerns about fiscal sustainability. Critics pointed out that this unprecedented level of indebtedness limited the government's flexibility to respond to future economic crises.
For most Americans, the last few years were very hard, stretching them to the breaking point. But billionaires and large corporations got richer than ever.
Inflation and cost of living woes. President Biden's administration faced sharp criticism for inflation, which soared by 19.3% since January 2021. While he claimed efforts to control prices and bring relief to American households, the reality was that weekly earnings rose only by 14.6%, lagging behind inflation. This disparity eroded purchasing power, leaving families to struggle under the weight of higher prices. The resulting strain on household budgets made essentials more expensive, costing the average American family over $17,000 annually. Analysts highlighted that overspending and increased regulations contributed to this economic climate, complicating efforts to achieve stability. Rising interest rates and financial strain. Before President Biden's tenure, interest rates were near zero, aiding affordability for mortgages, car loans, and business financing. However, during his administration, rates exceeded 5%, putting significant pressure on consumers and businesses alike. Higher interest rates meant higher borrowing costs, impacting homeownership, investments, and small business growth. This shift, combined with inflation, created a dual challenge that weighed down economic momentum and public confidence in the administration's handling of fiscal policies. Job creation. Misleading claims. President Biden often touted job creation as a success of his administration, notably correcting himself to claim 15 million jobs created. However, much of this growth was attributed to a natural post-pandemic recovery rather than new initiatives. Despite positive job numbers, the labor force participation rate remained at 62.5%, still below the pre-pandemic level of 63.3%. This statistic equated to 2.08 million fewer Americans in the workforce, adjusted for population gains. Furthermore, 50% of recent labor market growth from 2023 to 2024 stemmed from foreign-born workers, raising questions about the broader effectiveness of domestic employment policies. Plummeting consumer confidence. Under President Biden, the Consumer Confidence Index fell by 24% from February 2020, reflecting public pessimism about the economic future. This decline indicated that Americans were increasingly worried about their financial well-being, driven by persistent inflation and higher interest rates. Despite efforts to reassure the public, the overall sentiment remained skeptical, showcasing a significant disconnect between policy promises and public perception. Health policy missteps and Medicare concerns. Health policy under President Biden came under scrutiny when he stated he had beat Medicare. Analysts interpreted this as a reference to cost-cutting measures within the program, which many saw as raiding Medicare's resources to fund other spending agendas. The Medicare Hospital Insurance Trust Fund, responsible for Part A benefits, was projected to be insolvent within 12 years. Critics argued that while drug price caps, such as the $15 insulin shot, provided short-term relief, they introduced mandates that risked higher insurance premiums and stifled competition. This, in turn, threatened the future development of essential treatments. Student loan forgiveness. A burden shift. President Biden's ambitious student loan forgiveness program claimed to relieve millions of Americans, with $167 billion in student debt forgiven. However, this move sparked significant backlash as it essentially transferred the debt to taxpayers, many of whom did not benefit from the program. Approximately 87% of adults without student loans were effectively subsidizing the 13% who did, leading to frustration among working-class Americans. Additionally, experts highlighted how such policies could incentivize colleges to increase tuition, undermining the long-term affordability of higher education. Comparisons to past presidents. While President Biden's lowest approval rating of 36% was concerning, it was not historically the worst among U.S. presidents. Notably, 8 post-World War II presidents, including Harry Truman, Richard Nixon, George W. Bush, Jimmy Carter, and Ronald Reagan, experienced lower individual ratings at certain points in their terms. However, such comparisons provided little solace to Biden's critics, who viewed his presidency as marked by unfulfilled promises and deepening public disillusionment. Unlike some predecessors who managed to recover their public standing post-presidency, Biden's legacy, at least in the short term, was shaped by significant economic strain and policy challenges that resonated with voters. While history suggests approval ratings can rebound after leaving office, as seen with Lyndon Johnson, Biden's term was defined by controversies and struggles that may take years to reshape in public memory. Biden failed at border security. The recent Senate order bill, negotiated between 3 senators, and the Biden administration has been criticized as a disastrous failure for U.S. border security. Rather than implementing effective measures to address the ongoing border crisis, the Emergency National Security Supplemental Appropriations Act of 2024 allocates over $20.2 billion in funding while simultaneously facilitating mass illegal immigration through support for sanctuary jurisdictions and non-governmental organizations. Experts argue that this legislation codifies the current administration's open border policies, making it more challenging for future administrations focused on enforcement to rectify the situation. The bill's provisions, including the continued practice of catch and release and the expansion of parole practices, undermine the enforcement mechanisms necessary for maintaining border security. Critics warn that instead of securing the border, this bill will perpetuate the crisis, sending a clear message that the administration is not committed to upholding immigration laws. The legacy of fiscal challenges. President Biden's legacy is heavily marked by the financial and economic challenges that defined his time in office. The unprecedented increase in national debt, rising from $27.75 trillion to $34.73 trillion, underscored a period of aggressive spending and significant fiscal strain. Inflation remained a persistent issue, eroding household budgets and diminishing public confidence in long-term financial stability. Despite attempts at legislative successes, such as capping drug prices, these moves were met with mixed reviews as their broader economic impacts were questioned. The culmination of economic hardships, coupled with polarizing policies, left an imprint of fiscal challenges that cast a shadow over Biden's presidency. This perception of financial instability and policy misalignment has shaped his administration's narrative, framing it as a cautionary tale of economic pressure and political miscalculation. Political fallout and approval ratings. Biden's political troubles were underscored by his approval ratings, which hit a record low of 36% before his exit from the 2024 presidential race. This figure fell below his 43% term average and was the lowest of his presidency.
Or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
Comparatively, only Jimmy Carter had a lower 14th quarter rating among post-World War II presidents. The widespread disapproval, driven by both economic and social policy concerns, led to significant doubts within the Democratic Party regarding his viability as a candidate. His departure from the race mirrored historical precedents where presidents with low approval ratings, like Lyndon Johnson, stepped aside amid political pressure. If you found this analysis insightful, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth political insights and discussions. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think defined Biden's presidency? Stay tuned for more content.